Praise Yahweh. His laws are perfect. His ordinances are perfect. Through His laws and His ordinances, if we employ the judgment, we'll live in peace and harmony. We'll have no worries and fears. And our children will be safe from pedophiles and kidnappings and any other maladjustments that society can throw at us. So, and then tell you it's just an alternate lifestyle. Alternate to what? It was never a white thing to be homosexual until somebody convinced children, oh, that's the right thing to do. You don't know what you are. Let me tell you what you are. But, see, that draws us into these terrible and devastating days we live in. The men are responsible. Listen up, men. It's your place and your responsibility to maintain order in the house. The man is to employ the judgments that the Heavenly Father sets down for the family. For is it not written that the man is subject over the household like the Holy Father is over His chosen? He's the one to be spanking butts. Because the book of Proverbs tells us a parent that hates his child will never correct them. Will never push that child to pursue a career, a job. Teach them how to work. And because all these things, our indentured children don't know how to work. So, with that being said, we're going to have an interesting lecture today, and we're going to go back in and learn some more about the divers laws out of Deuteronomy chapter 23 today. I'll have enough to get through this chapter. I'm Yahweh's name witness. I'm a covenant relationship teacher. My name's Ray Bunzow. P.O. Box 143, if you care to send me some mail. I live in Roscommon, Michigan. That's in the United States of America. It's become a corporation in the United States. My zip code in the personal area I live in is 48653. Now if you care to send me an email, there's 4 small characters in the number here. rbun9@yahoo.com. If you care to watch other interesting lectures at Labyrinth to Israel on the YouTube, I've got over 140 different lectures. Labyrinth, LABYRINTHTOISHRAEL. Leave a comment if you so desire. Now today's Tebeth, the 5th, 5,720 years since Yahweh promised Adam to reveal the original sin. Next, please. Oh, wait. So, we're going to start out, and we're going to take a look at this commentary of the Holy Bible, the parchments, Old and New Testaments according to the authorized versions, with explanatory notes by Thomas Scott. Up, please. Thomas Scott is a rector of Ashton, Sanford, and Bucks in Scotland, I believe that is. This book was printed in the year 1843 A.D. Next, please. Now this is the note at the end of this chapter we're going to go through. Practical observations, and this is just the first paragraph from Deuteronomy chapter 23. Now we the people ought to value the privileges of Yahweh's people, both for ourselves and for our children, above all other advantages, and should carefully avoid whatever may throw a hindrance in the way of their possessing them. No personal blemishes, no crimes of progenitors, no rape, no pedophilia, no crimes of progenitors, no difference of nations can exclude us from these blessings. Now the nations he's speaking about here, he didn't make very clear, but he's talking about the white Western European nations, where the children of the man called Israel, formerly known of as Jacob, settled Western Europe. So you've got 12 nations in Western Europe that are the family and the offspring of Jacob, the man called Israel, that settled after Assyrian bondage. And the whole story behind that is a lecture for at least 2 or 3 other occasions, so we're just going to carry on here. The nations are the family and the children of the man called Israel. No difference of nations can elude us from these blessings, but an unsound heart will deprive us of them. And a bad example, an improper education, and even unsuitable marriages. Now this is talking about confusion of face. This is where you're talking about a mixed relationship between, how would you put it? Axle grease and vanilla ice cream. Unsuitable marriages will keep us from these blessings. Many occasions may occasion the loss of them to our children. The conduct of Yahweh as the righteous governor of the universe is not recorded for the imitation of private persons, but all men ought to follow the example of his patience, leniency, readiness to forgive, and kindness to his enemies. Nor should we ever forget how he turns the curse of oppressors into blessings in behalf of those whom he loves. Now what does he do to those that he doesn't love? Now doesn't he have a place called hell for them? Nor should we ever forget how Yahweh turns the curse of oppressors into blessings in behalf of those whom he loves and teaches to love him. The more imminent and evident the danger we are exposed to, the greater should be our watchfulness, diligence, and self-examination, and earnestness in prayer for forgiveness, prayer for peace with Father Yahweh, and protection from Father Yahweh. And some of that's going to be discussed in this chapter here today. Like I say, that was a footnote at the end of the chapter. That was the first paragraph of considerations. How we can be blessed or we can be cursed by our own actions. Remember, judgment is not always a bad thing. Judgment is the response to an action. So, when I was a child, if I broke the window in the garage door, was my father to be happy? Was he to be sad? Was he to be vengeful? Or was I just to receive judgment? Deuteronomy chapter 23. As we look at this chapter, I kind of like you to look at it through the eyes of knowledge, wisdom, and a little philosophy. See, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing how to use that fruit in a salad. And the philosophy is thinking, is ketchup a smoothie? Now you'll snicker about that, but as we go through this, you'll have to take the knowledge, all the knowledge that the book provides for his bride's instructions, to know how to implement the judgment according to the law to become peaceable. A judgment praises good behavior, and another judgment will paddle bad behavior one way or another. Deuteronomy 23 verse 1. This is an interesting verse. It says here, He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of Yahweh. And that was interesting, but it's sort of incomplete. I looked up the word stones. Nobody touched the word stones. It's not in the concordances. I couldn't find it in a lexicon. Stones, a definition of the stones was no place. In order to bring an idea in this lecture about the stones, I had to go to a different writing here. So we're going to look at the Septuagint version, according to the Vatican text, translated by Sir Lancelot Charles Lee Breton in, please, MDCCC XLIV. So what is that? 1944. Next, please. In chapter 23 of Deuteronomy here, we'll start right here. He that is fractured or mutilated in his private parts shall not enter into the assembly of Yahweh. And then we'll get a little head start here. One born of a harlot shall not enter into the assembly of Yahweh. So, just hold a second. So what we're talking about here is fractured or mutilated in his private parts shall not enter the assembly. So if you're mutilated, you have to stop and think. When the Israelites went off to war, they always had a special girdle where they gird their loins to protect themselves. Because as we get on through this lecture, we're going to learn something maybe new to some and not so new to others, but it's a very important aspect of the Caucasians. Now, not many people, like I say, commented on this. Part of the understanding behind this is if you're fractured or if you're vasectomized, you don't have any place in the altar, you don't have any place at the podium, you're not to be a teacher, a judge, an officer, because you've become a eunuch. You're at best a servant in the family. And as I get to the next part, all right, next please, then we'll go back and finish that explanation. Verse 2, as we saw from the Septuagint, a child from a harlot. Now here in this book, the King James, it says, a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of Yahweh, even to the 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of Yahweh. Okay. No, put the other one back. Let's do Ezra. So let's finish up with verse 1. Now when these things are done, right here, verse 2. For they have taken their daughters for themselves and for their sons, and so that the holy seed might have mingled themselves with people of those lands, the Perizzites, Jebusites, Ammonites, Moabites, Egyptians, and the Amorites. The holy seed, when you cut off the holy seed from ever being produced again, you become a eunuch. Alright, so, what do I have next on the list there? So let's look at the next transparency. The congregation. Right here in verse 1, verse 2, then into the congregation. Oh, what do I have wounded here? Alright, wounded. Deuteronomy 23:1. You've got the number here, 1795. But every little strike on the side has a different definition for wounded. Up, please. And down here in the New Testament, you still got 5 times it was used, once with no number, and 3 of the other places with a number. Next, please. So if you're wounded, this is the definition. 1795, mutilated or wounded. Alright, but that sends you to 93. Contrite or destruction from 92. Contrite, crush, destroy, humble, oppress, or smite. So if you're talking about your testicles and they're mutilated, they're destroyed, and there's destruction, they're broke, then they're mutilated. Takes you to 1790, they're crushed, they're injured, afflicted, they're definitely afflicted. Next, please. What's next in line there? And here we've got the congregation. Right over here you've got Deuteronomy 23:1 and 2, 69:51. But then here you've got 57:12, you've got 41:50. So you've got several different numbers for the congregation, which means 69:50, a prime root, to convoke, assemble, gather yourselves together. And then it went on from 50, an assemblage, a company, a congregation, a multitude. From 69:50, an assemblage, assembly, a congregation. So, and there again, next please. A congregation before 1956 at the church, they were all Caucasians. Unless you went outside the tracks, then they were all sort of dark in color. They had a certain hue to them. You know, the humans. Not the humans, the humans. The humans, the people of color. Now the humans are the spirit-filled children of the man called Israel that came from Adam, which is another topic for a different day. But here we are, bastard now. Now this came out of the Blue Letter Bible. Here's your Hebrew characters. The transliteration into English, or from the Aramaic, Hebrew, it's a mamzer. It's a root word from an unused root word meaning to be alien, a bastard. An alien is not part of your natural nationality. It's just like the Supreme Court decision of 1852 that an alien will never be allowed to be a citizen of the Estates United. But then, of course, then you had treason in the White House, and Lyndon Johnson signed the Bill of Equal Rights for the mongrels, those people of color, the humans. So the definition of bastard: a child of incest, illegitimate child, mixed population, born of an Israelite father and a heathen mother, or vice versa. A bastard shall not enter the congregation of Yahweh, even to the 10th generation shall he not enter the congregation. Now in Zechariah 9:6 is the other place the word bastard is used. And a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines. Now here it's plural in Hebrews 12:8. But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, so then you're bastards and not sons. So the Heavenly Father says that if He doesn't chastise you to make you right, then you're not His. Next, please. As we go along here now, no, it's the other one I need first. No, the other genealogy chart. We're going to talk about Ammonites. It might be the next page down. Ammonites and the Moabites next. But here's how they fall in the family tree. We've got Adam, and then we've got Abel, who's slain by Cain. Here's Cain up here, C-A-I-N, Cain, and his family line that leads off into oblivion and just stops right here, because it's really, it intermingles in the history of Israel, but it's not really exposed unless you know how to read. And then from here you've got Seth, Enos, Canaan, C-A-I-N-A-N, who I'll show in a minute. You mix this name up with one of Ham's children, and as you go through the lineage from Seth down to Noah, you get Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Oh, please, I can get the date on this. This is Ethnology Chart of the Nations, copyright 1980 by Gospel Publishing House out of New York. Next, please. We're looking for the Ammonites and the Moabites here. What we've got is the children of Ham. We're looking for the Ammonites and the Moabites. So here we've got Ham's children of Cush were the original Ethiopians before the donkey stole that name. And Mizraim was the Egyptians. And Phut was the original Libyans. And then here you've got Canaan. If you notice there's no I in here, and there's a double A here, and the actual enunciation of Canaan is, as I say, Canaan. It's not Canaan, because there's no I in here, as there is in his preceding uncle. Now can you slide that over here? I guess I forgot to throw the children of Lot up here. Here they are. No. But the Moabites are the children of Lot, as are the Ammonites, the children of Lot. Go back to Ezra, please. Now the children of Lot are from incest. And what they're talking about here, Ammonites, verse 3, Deuteronomy 23, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall never, doesn't get to never yet, does it? Shall not enter into the congregation, into the congregation, the group, the gathering, shall not enter into the congregation of Yahweh. Even to the 10th generation shall they not enter into the congregation of Yahweh. Forever. No, drop the end of that sentence. Forever. Which makes that simple. Because they met you not with bread and with water in the way when you went forth out of the land of Egypt, and because they hired thee, Balaam, the son of Beor, of Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. Nevertheless, Yahweh thy king would not hearken unto Balaam, but Yahweh thy father turned the curse into a blessing, because Yahweh thy husband loved you. Thou shalt not seek their peace, nor their prosperity in all the days forever. As long as when they're invited into the congregation, you can start to embrace them again. But until then, never. Forever. And that's what we get in Ezra. See, that's what we get here, because they were very rude to the family. When we came out of the Egyptian bondage and we wandered through the wilderness for 40 years, we weren't met with brotherly love. We weren't met with a kind reception. And what was it that Balaam brought? What is Balaam's curse to the children of Israel? Stop and think back to the story. It's imposed in this nation today. Sex sells. Illicit sex sells. Mongrelization, half-breeds, is the base for the new society proposed by the one world order. Now Ezra, he was never given credit for all the things that he's done. Ezra was the greatest writer of our people he was greater than Paul. After Babylonian captivity, when the Israelites went back into the land of Judea, Ezra took all the bits and pieces of the scrolls of the law and put the books all back together. And as you can see here, what it says here about all these different families. Now when these things were done, the princes came to me saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands, doing according to their abominations. This is the abomination. When you live with the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. Now all these nations were supposed to be annihilated. The Heavenly Father says you put all them nations away and you'll live happily for a long time. Excuse me. And so, for they have taken their daughters for themselves. Now, their daughters are one of these other nationalities for themselves and their sons, so that the holy seed has mingled themselves with the mongrel people of those lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and the rulers hath been chief in this trespass. The rulers. So if somebody of the upper class does it, does that mean everybody gets to fall in the ditch? Monkey see, monkey do? And when I heard this, I rent my garments and my mantle, and I plucked off the hair of my head and my beard, and sat down astonished. Then were assembled unto me every one that trembled at the words of Yahweh, King of Israel, because of the transgression of those that had been carried away, and I sat astounded until the evening sacrifice. Thank you. Okay, yeah. Now it's interesting here. As we go into verse 7, it tells us a little something here. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. And thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because you were a stranger in his land. The children that are begotten of them shall enter into the congregation of Yahweh in their third generation. Oh, that's emphatic. But in other places it says, separate yourselves from them people. As we read there from Ezra, separate yourself from those people. Well, Ezra sort of updated that. And yeah, that's next. And we're going to show you something here momentarily. But at this point in time, when this law was given, that the men could take from Egypt a daughter of Mizraim, or from Esau, Edom, a daughter of Esau, for a wife. But now, an Egyptian could not take an Israelitish woman and then be allowed to go into the congregation, because he does not carry the holy seed, an Egyptian. An Edomite could not take a daughter of an Israelitish woman and then 3 generations be allowed into the congregation, because the Edomites do not carry the holy seed. Because the holy seed has been narrowed down from all the families of Eber, from all the families of Seth, from all the families of Adam, to the one family of the man called Israel. So at this point in time, about 1450 BC, you could take a woman from 2 other nationalities, because we know that Esau, he's already mongrelized himself with the Hittites, and Mizraim, the land that Abraham got Hagar from and produced Ishmael, is why he could have that child through Hagar. That's why Sarah didn't stop that relationship, because Hagar was a great-grandson of Ham. But anyways, the children that are begotten of them shall be allowed to enter into the congregation in their 3rd generation if they continue to marry in the Israelitish family. But over the course of time that has changed because of different things that these families have done. At the time of Ezra wrote in Ezra chapter 9 verse 1 that you're no longer allowed to marry the Egyptians because of how they had treated the family of the children of the man called Israel. And now in Obadiah, now we know there's only 1 chapter, but still in all, Obadiah tells us, because of the Edomites, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, the man called Israel, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive Judah's forces, and foreigners entered into Judah's gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem. Even you was as one of them that cast lots. But you should not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger, carried away to Babylon. Neither should you have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither should you have spoken proudly in the day of distress. You should not have entered into the gates of my people in the day of their calamity. Yes, thou should not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Liars, thieves, and murderers. Neither should thou have stood in the crossways to cut off those of Judah that tried to escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of Judah that did not remain in the day of distress. So because of Edom's actions towards his brother, he got cut off. And as it says in the end day, that there will not be a leaf or a twig left. Next, please. I think so. No, the old book, yep. As we're getting there. Verse 9, Deuteronomy 23. When the host goeth forth against thine enemy, and keep thee from every wicked thing. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanliness, that chances him by night. It's interesting there that it claims that this happens after sunset. Then shall he go abroad out of the camp, and shall not return within the camp. But it shall be when evening arrives, he shall wash himself with water. When the sun is down, he shall return into the camp again. What do I have next there? Yeah, let's do that. I'll be needing that other one next. Now this is out of the Scott Commentary, chapter 23, verse 9 through 14. These precepts not only related to the camp of Israel previously, to their conquest of the promised land and settlement in it, but at all times when they went forth to fight their enemies. They were first reminded to use vigorous measures for reformation and to pay a strict attention to their ceremonial purifications, and that not to forget to due regard to natural cleanliness, not only for decency and for health's sake, but from respect to that Yahweh of purity, who, as it were, headed their armies and encamped among them, and also as an emblem of their inward purity. Well, let's read this while we're here, because we're going there next. We could not suppose that this law required the Israelites to entertain the slaves. Now, in the next verse, it's going to talk about servants that ran away. But here it's going to talk about these servants that ran away. They're slaves. Now, is it that because the book doesn't call them slaves, they're not slaves, but servants? But stop and think. if you do not own your own farm, you're a servant / slave in a job. Israelites to entertain slaves who have robbed their master, so you can't accept a slave that you know is a robber, a thief, or left their service without cause, but such only as were cruelly treated and fled to them for protection, especially from the neighboring nations. To such they were commanded to afford shelter and show kindness, both in order to recommend their religion and to give them opportunity of understanding it. But see, that giving them to learn their religion is an afterthought of the Catholic Church concept later in time that's been perpetrated on us. Excuse me. So let's read that. Verse 12. Verse 15. Thou shalt not deliver unto his master a servant which is escaped from his master unto thee. But you have to know he has not been a thief or a murderer. But if he's been he's been dealt fairly with, you've got to return him. He shall dwell with ye and among you in a place which the servant that runs away shall choose in one of thy gates. For it liketh him best that thou shalt not oppress it. Now, husbands of the family, you've got a new job for you. This is what our Holy Father wants from his holy children. Because you either want to be part of the bride or you want to be part of the ditch. And there's no in between. Verse 17. There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of Yahweh thy king for any vow. For even both those are an abomination unto Yahweh thy Father. So if it says, there shall be no whore, well, what about if they're just a slut? Doesn't that fall about in the same category? This is what Mr. Scott has to say. The magistrate was commanded not to convene at, much less to license, houses of prostitution and uncleanliness, not to allow any person openly to carry on the infamous trade of prostitution or sodomizing, but to expel and extirpate such nuances to the uttermost. In other words, these churches out here, Judeo-Christian churches, that are allowing the homosexuals to come in because they need them in their corporation roster, violating a Holy Father's laws. But see, they've got the grace to say, and they've got the cojones to say that they can do that because they've changed the Father's thinking. These words used denote persons dedicated or consecrated, that is, to the basest kinds of lewdness. So if prostitution and sodomite is the basest form of lewdness, according to the infamous licentiousness of idolaters and unnatural vices, so a sodomite is an unnatural vice, often openly perpetrated at the temples of idolaters. from which much of the gains of the priests and priestesses arose. For neither in this nor any other place where the word sodomite is used in our translation is there in the original any allusion of Sodom or its inhabitants. Thank you. Now that other... Yeah. And now just as the Septuagint says, verse 12, and thou shalt have a place outside the camp, and thou shalt go out there thither, and thou shalt have a trowel and a girdle, and it shall come to pass that when thou wouldst relieve thyself abroad, I hear they're talking about when you're traveling away from home. Now this is talking about when the army goes about. You're supposed to bury your stool movements out in a field, because your Heavenly Father doesn't want to see it, because He calls it a nuisance. Thou shalt relieve thyself abroad, that thou shalt dig it with it, and shalt bring back the earth and cover thy nuisance. Because Yahweh walks in the camp. So, verse 19. Do I have anything left? All right. Thank you. Thou shalt not lend usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victual. All right. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Anybody in the family, you lend them money, you lend them flour, you lend them products, motor oil or something for an automobile, or one of their vehicles. Whenever you loan to your family, your brothers, your cousins, then the family comes back even exchange. Verse 20. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that Yahweh thy God may bless thee in all thou settest thine hand in the land where thou ever goest to possess it. When thou shalt vow a vow unto Yahweh thy King, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For Yahweh thy Father will surely require it of thee, and it will be sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow, and say, and it shall be no sin in thee, that which is gone out of thy lips, be careful what you say, because that's where the judgment comes from. Thou shalt keep, thou shalt perform, even a free will offering, according and as thou hast vowed unto Yahweh thy husband, which thou hast promised with thy mouth. Now let's go over to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. This is a second witness to this. Verse 4. Well, let's start on verse 3. For a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by a multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto Yahweh, defer not to pay it, for Yahweh hath no pleasure in fools. Now that's somebody with too many words and not enough action. For Yahweh hath no pleasure in fools. pay that which thou hast vowed. Better it is that thou shouldest not vow than thou should vow and not pay. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say before the angel that, oh, it was a mistake. Wherefore should Yahweh be angry at thy voice and destroy the works of your hands? For in a multitude of dreams, dreamers have things to say, and places to sit, and nothing to do. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 7. For in the multitude of dreams and many words, there are also divers vanities. But fear Yahweh. Verse 24, Deuteronomy 23. When thou comest into the neighbor's vineyard, you mayest eat grapes at thy own pleasure, but thou shalt not put any in a vessel, in a pocket, in a bag. You cannot harvest any. Whatever you eat, those are yours. Anything you take, you owe for. Verse 25. When thou goest into a standing corn of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pluck the ears with your hand, and thou shalt not take a sickle into thy neighbor's standing corn. So, anything that you eat while you're in the neighbor's garden, in his vineyard, in his fields, one way that the Heavenly Father, in a time of plenty, fed the poor. But you can't take anything in your pocket. Put it in your hat. No lunch bags. As I think back, I forgot to mention about the Moabites one thing. Let me finish with this. Elimelech took Naomi and the two children off into the land of Moab in a time of famine. The two sons married two supposedly Moabitish women. Upon Naomi's return, she brought Ruth with her, but Ophir, she stayed in the land of Edom because she was a natural citizen there. Oh, but she was a good-looking girl, no doubt about that. But now think, Boaz, being a kinsman redeemer, our history book calls him kinsman, so Ruth has to be somehow connected to the Israelite family someplace, or he's not a kinsman redeemer. 2, if the courts are honest, and in that day they were better than they are now, or later, a Moabitess they knew could not be invited into the congregation forever. They'd have told Boaz no. But even though the son married a Moabitess girl that had moved there like earlier, her family went there 25 years or so earlier from Israel and met up with their cousins when they came sometime later. So Elimelech and Naomi's son that married Ruth was actually kin, but the other son married an alien. So, with that being said, Ruth was not a Moabitess, but she just lived in the land of Moabites. Divers Laws, Deuteronomy chapter 22. I'm Yahweh's name witness, the covenant relationship teacher. Up, please. Today is December 23rd, a couple of days after winter solstice, 2017. And from this point on, looking ahead a little bit, we've got approximately 100 or 112 days till the Feast of Passover. Now looking ahead just a couple of days, December 26th, is the Sabbath for the first quarter, as we're just a couple of days past the new moon Sabbath. The Sabbath falls on the last day of the moon cycle. And that's how we figure out when the Sabbath is. Because people are scattered today. The children of the man called Israel are scattered. That doesn't necessarily just mean they're scattered from this place to that place to another place. They're scattered in their mind's eye. They don't think alike. They don't want to think alike because they always think. They take the concept, you ask them a question. I think. But see, the detail is forever means forever. Like the Feast of Passover. Forever. The Feast of First Fruits. Forever. The Feast of Tabernacles. Forever. And here, we're at this time of the year again, and jolly old Saint Nick. You know, they show him a robust kind of fella. The history book says, do not lie to your children. Do not lie to your children. But those of us that don't fear our Heavenly Father will stay in our pagan ways. Because it's fun. It's for the children. And the children doesn't leave the most of us until we pass on. And then we have judgment. The book tells us it's our instructions while we're here. B-I-B-L-E. Bride's instructions before leaving earth. You can do it the Father's way, or you can do like most of us do. I think. Let the Father do your thinking. Employ the judgments, and things will work out better for our people. In Yahweh's name, so be it.